Hey guys, this is Dallas here from the Just Three Brothers podcast, back for another video. Just before we get started, we want to let you guys know that we have our podcast on a bunch of various platforms now. So there's Podomatic, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Amazon, Deezer, and FM. It's also obviously on YouTube and Rumble. So today we're going to be talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Obviously, got my favorite character behind me, the Hulk. He's been my guy for literally ever since I was like 3 years old. And today we're going to be talking about phase one, and that's Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Thor, the Incredible Hulk, Captain America, all leading up to the last project, and that's the Avengers. So we're just going to jump right into it. Let's get it.
All right, so yeah, one thing I thought was really interesting that I watched in a video recently was in the early 2000s, the comic industry really wasn't doing all that great. And Marvel took a big gamble by taking out a loan from the bank, which was like something upwards of $500 million to try and get this kickstart this cinematic universe. And I just think they took a huge gamble and it really paid off for them because they had a huge success with the original Iron Man and as well the Hulk. So yeah, I think that definitely paid off for them.
I think that's a fair assumption to make. You can't really think of too many high top hitting movies at the time, especially in the superhero franchise, other than Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, which they always have a special place in my heart. But I think Carter's sentiment is quite right when he was saying that the comic book industry was dying at that point. So that is a bit of a gamble. I would argue that if Iron Man wasn't such a success, the MCU would have been probably dead on arrival. That's my opinion. I think that Robert Downey Jr. and just the creative direction of that movie, it really kind of reinvented what comic book movies felt like at the time. There was obviously several different Batman movies and Spider-Man and origin stories and everything coming out of the woodwork. But the Iron Man movie really just felt like it was a tier above the rest. It was just so well done. The CGI at the time was absolutely gorgeous. And that movie is quite old. And I think it still stands up to some degree if you watch them again.
I think Iron Man, the original Iron Man, really took off because of the fact that Robert Downey Jr. turned his life around and just became an amazing actor. Like he did such an amazing job. I really feel like if they would have picked any other actor and put him in his shoes, I don't think the movies would have took off. Maybe the MCU still would have thrived, but it definitely would not have thrived like it did.
I think that's fair to say. It's just really nice to see that they seem to really have a plan in mind when they executed these movies. You know, they had all these great intro stories come out, like Iron Man and Thor and that sort of stuff. And the casting, in my opinion, is like the best casting that could have ever been done. I don't think you could have. You can't imagine, a Wolverine without Hugh Jackman. You can't imagine Iron Man without Robert Downey Jr. So I think the casting was basically as good as it gets for these movies, and just how they were so precisely articulated all for the lead up to the Avengers movie. I think it's top shelf. This is some Wagyu meat. This is how you do it. You have to really set these movies up in a certain way, and I think that the MCU did it like no other before them.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting point you brought up. Is just how planned they had it from the get-go. They started doing those end credit scenes, I think, right at the beginning, even with their first one with Iron Man. Uh, Fury comes in the end, and then you're like, oh, this is really getting me hyped up because he's wants to get the Avengers Initiate started or whatever. So I think right off the bat they had a plan and they knew what direction they wanted to go with these movies.
I think I agree with Carter 100% because the fact is they had it all fleshed out and planned out from the jump. They had I think they probably had up to phase two done in phase one. Like they knew what they were doing. Like Carter said, they had an end credit scene, which had never really been done before. I think that's a really big thing to realize is they brought in Nick Fury in the first Iron Man at the very end of the movie. And you at that time, like obviously true comic book fans knew exactly who that was, but they didn't say his name. They just showed him as a picture of him, I think in the donut at the top. And then, obviously, in the Incredible Hulk, they had a great end credit scene where literally General Ross comes in and has a beer or whatever with Robert Downey Jr. and says, "So I hear you got a big problem." Like that just goes to show like the depth that they had already. But another thing that's really important that Katlin was talking about is the depth of the actual roster, the actors that played every single character. I cannot imagine Thor without Chris Hemsworth. Like, he is an Australian, like, he's a specimen. Like, he's jacked. He looks exactly like Thor, his voice, everything. Chris Evans is Captain America. Like, I can't imagine, like, in the Captain America movie when he was the little skinny 90-pound guy with the CGI, like, even that I could still like relate to him playing that character. Obviously, you got Jeremy Renner. Shout out to Jesse, Hawkeye. We got Scarlett Johansson also as Black Widow, and she was just stunning, and like, you know, you really believe that she was this Russian intelligence member. And then obviously you got the two Hulks, Edward Norton. I'll let Callan deep dive into that one because he was a huge fan of Edward Norton. And then you got Mark Ruffalo from the Avengers, and I just think all the casting decisions were completely wonderful, and I don't think the MCU would be the same without those first original 6 actors.
I mean, it's star power, and that's something that it had. These people like not only were big stars at the time and currently in their own respect, but they also like executed these roles so perfectly. I think that just how Dallas was touching on the whole Hulk thing. I think it was really interesting to note that not only were these the first movies to kind of do these end credit scenes with a little bit of a cliffhanger or kind of like Carter says, hype you up for the next movie. But the writing was incredible, even with the Ross scene in the bar when he says he wears such expensive, nice suits. This is like kind of a tip to the hat that he's Iron Man. You gotta love the writing. The one thing that I've always kind of critiqued Marvel for, especially in the MCU, is like some of their jokes. There's like this type of style of joke that I find is like a Marvel humor, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world, because it's clearly, I mean, you have the entire audience erupting and roaring in laughter. So it's clear that it's like, catering to the lowest common denominator, obviously. But I think that the writing is so strong. The character development is incredible. Just how they absolutely elevate these characters is just incredible. And, I think it's hard to compare it to anything else, like really. Carter was even saying before, we touched on the fact that the comic book world was dying. Its core was about to burn out. And I really think that it took these movies to really push it to the next direction. As far as Hulk is concerned, the one thing I've always found very interesting about the MCU is the fact that they set the movies up with Edward Norton's Hulk, but then they eventually just scrapped that and then they brought in Mark Ruffalo. I think Mark Ruffalo is a phenomenal Hulk. I like the actual aesthetic of the Hulk. I believe that's actually the Hulk in Dallas's background currently.
Yes, it is.
But I really, really enjoyed Edward Norton's depiction of him, and I also loved that version of Hulk. The Hulk that was, he didn't look so like Andre the Giant. He looked he looked cool. He kind of had an edgelord haircut. He was like super cut, like just striations all over. I loved the whole, General Ross deal there too. But I mean, again, they change actors around and the cast around. They do this in movies from time to time. I know that in the Nolan's movies, the person who played Rachel, the love interest, was actually switched out as well. So that's always just a small critique for me. It's not the end of the world when obviously an actor decides to not portray that character again. But as far as continuity sake, it was, I thought that was so interesting, because let's also remember that they did a Hulk before that was David Bana was doing the Hulk, and that movie gets shit on a lot. I know that there's a lot wrong with it, like the whole like levitating rip dogs and like the whole dad can turn into lightning and stuff. There's like really, really weird choices, but I really enjoyed that Hulk a lot. I liked how he looked almost like Brock Lesnar, but painted green. And the whole scene when he's in the desert jumping around and, throwing tanks around. I really thought that was a lot of fun. It was the first time we actually got to see the Hulk. I thought they were going to do this thing where like we didn't even get to see the Hulk that much, because it was such this grandiose character at the time. I thought it would do a lot of like, oh, he's behind a tree, he's kind of shaded, or like they didn't really want to show him that much. But in the desert, I mean, there's no other like full lighting effect, and the setting, like you couldn't hide in that. And it was really cool to see that they really, really made Hulk shine in that one as well. I think all three of the Hulk movies are great.
Yeah, I think that just the visual effects alone in the first Hulk movie, I think it was either 2003 or 2004, but it's really incredible just the things they were able to do. The scene where Hulk grabs that tank and just like throws it, it's just the animation is just really good. One nitpick I do have is, even though I think the actual Hulk looks really good in that movie, I think his green hue is he looks a little too green in my opinion. It just doesn't really blend in with the rest of the world. But one thing I really liked about that movie is just the the comic book frames, the way they did it. They kind of made the movie feel like a comic book by having different frames come up onto the screen. I thought that was really cool.
I
But
re-
I actually think the first Hulk, in my opinion, in the 2004 movies sorry, actually looks better than the one in the 2008 version. I think just the CGI looks better. In the 2008 one, he kind of looks more like a video game character, whereas the first one kind of looks more toned in and realistic. But obviously, Mark Ruffalo's Hulk is obviously the best of the three. Just the CGI, and I really like how they took Mark Ruffalo's face and actually kind of used that as a reference to make the Hulk's face, and he really does look like Mark Ruffalo, especially in the new Avengers movie where he becomes what is it, Professor Hulk or something like that. Yeah, he really looks like Mark Ruffalo, and I think the CGI has come a long way.
I think I'm glad that you brought that up. I noticed you used the word obviously the best of the three, which again I would disagree with that. I think that my favorite Hulk and the actual Hulk. I'm not so concerned with the actual Bruce Banner character. I think that he's whatever. He's just basically the chariot that's driving us to the end point of the Hulk finally coming out. I think we really always have to think of when we're talking about the Hulk, which actually big green gamma boy we're talking about. And I would say that the Edward Norton one was my favorite just by design. I know that it was a little bit he wasn't as big as the other two, but just the way he looked, I thought it was a lot cooler. And the thing that I have noticed is that, I mean, obviously CGI is going to be obliterated by the passage of time. I think that there's going to be a time in 10 years that we look back at Professor Hulk and we kind of cringe because it looks like this uncanny valley of Mark Ruffalo, but also it's the CGI green larger version. As much as I like that they did that homage to Joe Fixit, the Gray Hulk, which is Hulk where he's in full control, but he's not quite as strong because obviously the rage factor isn't involved. I would have really loved to see them kind of go down the Joe Fixit route. I've always loved an idea of the Hulk being in full control, but it's the Gray Hulk where he's not quite as strong. But I mean, it's Banner behind the wheel driving the whole time. So I like the homage that they did with Professor Hulk. But again, I it really made me a little bit disappointed that we never got Joe Fixit.
The thing is, I'm not gonna agree with either of you guys. Like, I love the Hulk in general, but the Brock Lesnar version of the Hulk, the one that David Banner played, the thing I liked about him, I actually really liked the fact that he was so green. Obviously, it's not exactly comic book worthy, but the thing with him is it really showed his power scaling. It showed how strong he was. The fact that he was able to do like 5 jumps and be out of the desert, like that's realistic to the comics. You know what I mean? The fact that he's able to rip tanks apart and throw them at helicopters, like that's also comic book worthy. The Hulk from the Edward Norton movie, he couldn't even jump on top of a building. He had to take 10 jumps to like go up the side of it. He could barely rip a car in half. He kicked Emil Blonsky into a tree. Ooh, big whoop-de-doo. Oh, he ran into a big truck, one of the sonic boom trucks, and like pushed it over. Cool. The Hulk from the first Avengers movie, he literally, I'm always angry, and he punches the giant Shatari like warship and like implodes it, and then he jumps up onto the building and takes out like 20 guys in like 10 seconds, and then jumps all the way across the city and smashes into one of the flying things. Like it just shows how powerful the Hulk is, and I didn't like the Edward Norton version where they basically made him that he wasn't really that impressive, and that was the biggest problem I had with that movie. Like I like the look of him, don't get me wrong. I like because he looked really like an insane Hulk, like a really savage Hulk. But the fact is, he like you said, he was small, and he wasn't very powerful. Like I mean, can you imagine that Hulk going up against Thor? No, it wouldn't have happened. Thor literally would have clubbed him. So it's like they had to switch that up, I think, and that's the most important
I
thing.
can see that. I can definitely see where you're coming from there. But the thing about that movie is I feel like there was so many cool just things in that movie where he ripped the car apart and had, boxing gloves made out of metal. I loved the whole fight with Abomination. The one thing that I don't think the Hulk in any other movie before the Mark Ruffalo ones is when he actually calls himself the Hulk in that movie when he's fighting the Abomination, he's swinging the chain, and he says, the whole any last words, and he says Hulk smash, smashes the ground, causes all the fissures. I think that was such an epic scene in the movie. Him even trying to fight the human version of Abomination when he had the Captain America serum, when he's juking and he's running across the field at like Mach speed, and even when he fights the Hulk, when the Hulk is trying to stab him with those basically those metal shards that he's holding. I think the movie had a lot of really redeeming qualities. I would agree that the current rendition of Hulk that we have does fit a lot better into these movies, and just how Dallas mentioned before, just the example of power that he's setting forward makes a lot more sense in these regards. But I do really think that that movie as a standalone Hulk movie was perfectly fine. I think it worked good, and I think that the casting choices were good. I personally love just the look of it. I've already said that, but I also really like Edward Norton. I think that Edward Norton is a phenomenal actor. I think he's actually probably like one of my top 10 favorite actors of all time. He's so good at doing this massive range of, the work that he's willing to do. And I think that I can't even think of a time where his performance was just bad in a movie. You have these countless movies where he does a great job, whereas the other two were great too. David Bann is great. I think he's a phenomenal actor as well. And Mark Ruffalo is really good too, but I feel like Mark Ruffalo wasn't very, in my opinion anyway, I'm sure that you two would disagree, but I didn't feel like he was very convincing as like this, you know, top tier level scientist who's, just like breaking down the Da Vinci Code. Like he kind of seemed like a bit of a pud in those movies. I found, a lot of sequences where he kind of, isn't sure of himself, and he just seems like it's kind of hard to drive the message home that he's this crazy, top level scientist. I just felt it was a little not believable, but that's probably arguably my only gripe with Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk.
But that's also the best comic book rendition of David or Bruce Banner that you're ever going to get. He literally, Bruce Banner in the comics isn't sure of himself. He doesn't really have a clue. Yeah, he's got a genius level intellect, but he's not able to use it half the time because he's so he's clumsy. He's just very shy. Like the Hulk literally just amplifies his qualities. Like normally he's not even, he's not a the problem with Edward Norton I found is he was almost too good of an actor. Like I struggled with that because like I wouldn't even believe him until the very end of the movie, when he gets the green eyes at the end when he's in the forest. Like that's the only time that I actually thought that he was turning into the Hulk. Like I don't know, I just pictured him too much a Fight Club, and maybe that's just the star quality that I get from Edward Norton. But overall, I think all of the actors that portray Bruce Banner really have their each individual good qualities about them, and I think that the CGI is going to keep going a long way. I doubt we'll ever see a standalone Hulk film again because they don't really perform well in the box office. Like if you look at Thor Ragnarok, not to bring up Phase 3, but if you look at Thor Ragnarok, that was the best performing movie with Hulk in it. Period. Other than like obviously the Avengers and stuff, but there's also 10 characters or more
It was
compared
great
to.
though. I think that Hulk was a very nice kind of giant green cherry on the top of the sundae, but I feel like that movie really was driven forward by um, Chris Hemsworth's performance of Thor. I mean, when we
Mhm.
think of Thor, come on, it's Chrissy boy. You gotta love him. He's gorgeous. He's cut. He's looking the part. He's feeling the part. Chris Hemsworth to me is in that top shelf. That you got the good china in the cabinet. As far as Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and I would even say Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. I think that a
Mhm.
lot of these characters just feel like, how could you do it without him? And I think that Chris Hemsworth really, as the God of Thunder, was such a good choice. I think that he's great. And the one thing obviously this isn't phase one, but I feel like I got to get it out of the way before we go any further with Chris Hemsworth. It was very hard for me in my soul to witness a fat Chris Hemsworth. It was hard for me in my heart to see my handsome boy, my beautiful number one handsy boy, in this fat, gross state. It made me really sad. I think that there's no room for that. We have to elevate Chris Hemsworth. I think Hemsworth deserves to have, his own movie, just a Chris Hemsworth movie. I'd love to see that, but seeing him as Fat Hulk, I thought that was a
Hulk.
Fat Thor, bro.
oh, sorry, Fat Thor, not Fat Hulk. I'd love to see a Fat Hulk.
That
But
would definitely be
Thor,
fun.
Fat
No.
Thor for me was I think it was probably arguably one of the worst choices they made in the MCU, other than casting Brie Larson. But I think we really can consider a lot of like angles with that and why they decided to do that. But in my opinion, I think there's no place in it. But again, I think
I'll touch on it for 2 seconds, by the way, and then we're gonna go back to phase one. So basically, the reason that they made Thor fat is because fit Stormbreaker Thor basically was the most powerful character other than Captain Marvel to come onto the scene. So if they if they did kept him as non-depressed, like fit Thor, where he was training and getting more powerful, he in that last battle where it was the three of them, Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor, they would have handled Thanos right there without any Infinity Stones, 100%. Thor almost defeat Thanos as fit Stormbreaker Thor after his brother was killed and all the pain and the anger he had. If he would have kept that going into that battle with Thanos, he would have took Thanos out 100% without the Infinity Stones, especially with Cap with Mjolnir and Iron Man with his nanotech armor. That's why they did it. They had to basically power him down, just like they powered down the Hulk as Professor Hulk, and that's why they did it.
That's fine, and I get that, but it's like I think it's always so unfortunate to see a power down after you've seen these movies build characters up. I think that it's really great to see the characters like tap into their ultimate top tier potential. You see Captain America grabbing the Mjolnir. That was probably one of the most epic scenes in cinematic history I've ever witnessed in theater. I thought that was incredible. I'd love to see Hulk, get, just absolutely rage induce large and just become huge, because everyone knows he gets bigger when he's more mad.
Yeah.
I would love to see like this like 70-foot tall Hulk who is just raging with white eyes, just going crazy and just eating people. Like I'd love to see this kind of strength. So it's a shame that they never really got to show us the shredded Stormbreaker. I would have loved to see it. I think that it's really great to see the end game. We're now in the end game. The title of this movie is the end game. We should see the end game. So to see, a chubby Chris Hemsworth, although, it personally offended me, it also offended me on a cinematic level as well, because I think that we should have seen a really, really elevated top tier Thor. And it just kind of seems a little bit, unfortunate that you have this god of thunder and this mighty warrior for years and years and years, but all of a sudden now I'm sad and I gained some weight and I'm playing Fortnite. It's just I feel like they could have done a lot different choices with that, and we were in the end game, so it's a little unfortunate to see that we didn't.
Yeah, so we're gonna bring it back basically right to the start. So obviously we talked about Iron Man and how good of a movie that was. You got to see Iron Man's origin story, and I think with all the origin stories you have from every other character, whether it's Wolverine or Spider-Man or Batman, like we've all got to see the origin story. So I think seeing Iron Man in that cave, like first creating the armor and stuff, I think that was really, really cool, because Iron Man never had a standalone Iron Man movie. It wasn't even a thought, you know what I mean? So it was nice to see that. And basically it was nice to see the character development of Robert Downey Jr. over the course of that the movie. And he basically went from just like a cocky, obviously like he's rich and everything, so he was just went from someone who's super cocky to somebody who could actually like save the world and actually be a superhero at the at the very end of the movie. I am Iron Man. Like at the beginning of the movie he wasn't Iron Man, and it was nice to see that character develop so far.
One thing that kind of disappoints me is just how much Hulk underperforms when it comes to just how well his movies do. I'd really like to see like a Planet Hulk movie or something, because I know Marvel is doing a lot of these new standalone series like WandaVision and things like that. But I don't know. I feel like a Planet Hulk movie would be really sick. And as Kat mentioned before, it'd be really cool to see Hulk just transform and get this next level of power.
I think that is a really good point. I as much as I think that there are some pretty cool sequences and some really, really shiny moments that the Hulk does get in some of these movies, I feel that as far as how strong he is, he does underperform in these movies. We have to remember, like, us three being massive, comic book consumers and that sort of thing, and just superheroes in general are so great. Seeing Hulk in Wolverine versus Hulk and Thor versus Hulk, just to see this incredible unstoppable power that he has. He gets sent to hell and he's fighting demons, and it's just like he's just so incredibly strong. I feel like he does underperform. He doesn't even feel like he's one of the most powerful members of the team, which is kind of unfortunate. But they're willing to do that with some of these characters to get it for free. I think Captain Marvel was a good addition to the series for sure. But I think that she was way too good, way too quick for no reason other than the fact that, I mean, the character is kind of a broken OP character anyway. It's very Superman-esque in this series, but I feel like, and again, this isn't like a direct negative towards, Brie Larson or even the character of Captain Marvel, but I feel like that character definitely didn't earn it. I feel like in the later movies, especially in Endgame and Infinity War, she kind of just comes in and she has this very like, yeah, of course I'm here. Of course I'm gonna, save the day and take out these giant like war vessels. It's like you didn't really earn it. You had one movie before this. So I feel like the other people, especially Hulk, he should have definitely been able to show his power. It feels like it's really unfortunate that Thanos kind of bodied him in that first scene and he was kind of cucked from Jump Street after that. So it was really unfortunate to see that he never really, got to shine at all. And then after that movie, he becomes Professor Hulk. So, I mean, I think that those two movies, Hulk really did underperform. It was just unfortunate that he was so cucked, in fact, that he had to wear the Hulkbuster suit. He couldn't even be Hulk anymore. He had to be a shell of the Hulk. So it was a little bit unfortunate for me to see that.
How do you think I felt? Really, like that there's no way to describe it. I was like legit angry. I can't even describe, like, it actually upset me like that he got bodied. So that here's the thing with Captain Marvel. I get where they were going through the whole series. They had planned at the beginning of phase 3 to jump right into Captain Marvel, because at the end of Infinity War, Thanos snaps his fingers, kills trillions of people, right? The last message Nick Fury gets to send out is to Captain Marvel, right? So then that's when the Captain Marvel movie comes out, and then right after that you go into Endgame. So but they planned on having her be the most OP character in the series, and I get that, whatever. But honestly, if you look at the comics, Hulk would rip her in half. Any rendition of Captain Marvel would get ripped in half. Even actual Marvel would get ripped in half. Like, it doesn't matter. Hulk is way stronger than her in every single comic rendition there is. So it really frustrated me that that character was able to just come in and just take over like that. They built up Hulk as the strongest character in the series. They built him up. That was obvious at the end of the first Avengers. He, like, just with the one punching the Shatari warship, like I said earlier, and then punching Thor, and like going battle toe to toe in battle with the God of Thunder, which is the only character in the series who could actually do that at that point, right? And then obviously in phase 2, Age of Ultron, he's the one that he gives Age of Ultron, or Ultron, sorry, the last blow, right? Like, you could tell that they were building this character up to be the strongest character in the series. And obviously then Thor Ragnarok, you could tell that Thor had the upper hand once he figured out kind of his god powers, which, I don't entirely agree with that either, but it's a Thor movie, so I'm not going to take anything away. Plus it's Chris Hemsworth. Like, do what you want, buddy. Like, you can do anything. You're a beauty.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that sentiment. I think Chris Hemsworth is allowed to do whatever he wants.
So anyway, the Hulk like has his time to shine, and even at the end of the movie, when Asgard's getting blown up, basically Hulk literally jumps at Surtur, like the giant Surtur, just smashes him in the head, and then Thor has to tell him, like, relax, like, just let him do his thing, like, this is a plan, right? So Hulk got his own little bit of a time to shine, and that's why at the very beginning of Infinity War, when Hulk just, like Loki says, like, we've got a Hulk, and then Hulk comes in and has like 10 seconds of like putting a beat down on Thanos, and then all of a sudden it's like game over for the Hulk. And then I don't want to be, I love the MCU. It's like my favorite movies, my favorite thing probably out there, and I don't want to knock it, but when they did that to my character and they ruined him for the rest of the series, it really hurt. It sucks. I'm not gonna lie. Like, the fact that they literally built up Hulk for 2 phases and then just nerfed him into the ground to the point where he was basically useless. That kind of killed it for me. But whatever, it is what it is. Like, he had his tiny little moment to shine as Professor Hulk when he held up the building in Avengers Manor or whatever. But it's still, like you said, it would have been sweet. It would have been sweet to see a planet Hulk scale world breaker Hulk come in there and go toe to toe with Thanos one last time before the snap and everything. You know what I mean? But obviously that wasn't part of the plan. I know a lot of diehard Hulk fans like myself were definitely displeased with the direction that the Hulk took, but it's fine. He had what, 6 12, he had 12 movies to be the most powerful character, and even for the first half of phase 3, almost the whole phase 3, he was still one of the most powerful characters. um Basically he got out, like, Doctor Strange outshines him, obviously Stormbreaker Thor outshines him, and clearly Captain Marvel, and even Wanda, really, if you want to break it right down. But that's fine. There's different scaling, right? There's millions of different renditions of characters in the comic books, and there's been literally comic books where Spider-Man pulls a building on top of Hulk, and that's it. That's it for Hulk by Hulk. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. It's not the most powerful rendition of Hulk, and that's fine. I still like where the movies went. I still have mad love for the MCU, and that's why I think I cherish Phase 1 and 2 more so than Phase 3. Even though I loved Phase 3, it was my favorite phase, but I cherished the first two more because my boy was still top tier.
Let me ask you this. There's something I've always kind of been curious about because, I have such love for this particular character. How would you have felt in the later phases if they would have been more genuine to the Joe Fix-It and went that route opposed to Professor Hulk? I'd love to get your take on this, Dally.
Well, I don't think Joe Fixit like isn't Bruce Banner. I'm almost 100%. I'm gonna have to find out after this. I've never been a huge fan of Joe Fixit, to be honest. I honestly though, I would have much rather had Joe Fixit as a separate character or even Bruce Banner than what we had with Professor Hulk.
Or Red Hulk.
Oh my God,
Oh,
okay.
well, that's clearly an amazing direction to take this stuff with Rolk. But I was just simply, I'd like to kind of do a little bit of a touch. I've always been curious what Dallas thought about that. I don't think I've ever asked them. They did do Professor Hulk in these movies. And I mean, I feel like it's good for the lulls and it's good for the laugh factor. But I was actually curious what he really thought of a Joe Fixit direction with the Gray Hulk.
I would have rather literally had any other Hulk than Professor Hulk. I would have rather have like a Savage Hulk without Banner. I would have rather had Joe Fixit. I would have much rather had Rolk in his prime, not this new Rolk in the animated series and stuff, but like an actual
I
powerful.
thought Red Hulk was like a separate entity though.
It is. It is
That's
100%.
Well, that would be a
it's,
cool
it's
movie.
General Ross.
It's General Ross. Yeah, Betty's dad. Yeah,
Okay.
and when he first came into the comic book scene, dude, he was a freaking monster, like a
Imba.
monster. He's like basically he was the equivalent of what we have with Squirrel Girl right now in the comics. Like he was literally just coming in and he beat Galactus.
Who's Squirrel Girl?
She's a really really overpowered character in
Yeah.
she's honestly like if in every top 10 list right now on the internet she's in the
Top
top
one.
10 list. No matter what, no matter where you want to put her, like sometimes she's at the top, sometimes she's whatever, but she's, as far as Marvel comics go, I don't even know when she came out. I want to say she came out in like the 80s, but it might actually have been like super recently. But I know even if she did come out in the 80s, she was never like she is now. And basically, she summons an army of squirrels and is able to take out like every single person. Like she took out Thanos, she took out Galactus, she took out. I
No
even
wonder the
Carter.
comic industry died.
Yeah, it's not good. It's
yeah,
not
it's
good.
no, it's not good at all. That's the thing though. The scaling is different no matter what comic you go in. The scaling's different. Like even the Death Hulk that's out right now. So basically, the most powerful character. Frick, I didn't really want to go into this, but the most powerful character in the Marvel universe period is the one above all. He's like basically God in our world. You know what I mean? And so basically, Hulk goes to hell, and there's a being called the One Below All, and he's the most powerful in that realm. You know what I mean? And Hulk one punches him and hits him so hard that he opens like a rift in a dimension, and literally like goes back to our world by defeating. So basically, he defeats like the number two most powerful thing in the comics. And like to put it into perspective, Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet couldn't, and in the comics, Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet was way more OP than he was in the MCU. But Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet literally did nothing. Could do nothing against the One Above All, and the One Below All is right on the same tier as that. So it just goes to show how it's not Death Hulk. I can't remember the name. I was literally just reading it like last week. I just can't remember the name of it. But basically they're actually finally doing justice to my guy in the comics now, with Hulk just being like this. Like the most powerful he ever was, other than this, was definitely World Breaker Hulk. Right?
Haven't they introduced this like new concept where the gamma radiation is like demon energy
Oh,
or something?
yeah, that's what it is. That's what I'm talking about. Demon Hulk or whatever. Like,
Well, okay, let's be fair though, boys. There's a massive difference between the MCU and the actual comic books. I mean, because if we're talking about the strongest character in all of the Marvel history, we can't forget about Spider-Man. Spider-Man is incredible, and I think we all love that character.
Spiders, man.
Yeah, it's instead of Peter Parker being bit by a single spider, he falls in a vat.
A spider gets bit by Peter Parker.
No. It's even cooler than that. He falls into a vat of hundreds of thousands of spiders that all consume his body. But what they did is they all consumed his intellectual, like encompassing, like
So he's just a million spiders, and he's
then it becomes a hive mind where the inside of the spider suit is hundreds of thousands of radioactive spiders that have Peter Parker's thoughts and stuff. So Spiders Man is incredible. I think that he is really just a sleeper comic book that's really cool. I love that. But I'm just, obviously I'm being,
I wouldn't put it past Marvel to actually make that. I mean, considering how
Oh,
much
it's actually it's legit.
that's a real thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
it's
thought
legit.
you were just
No. But
Oh.
I was trying to make the point that the comic books can take a little bit of more liberties than the movies, and I think that there's a lot of cool power scaling and power creep in the comics that we'll just simply never see in the MCU, and that's fine. But I love the obscure. I love the great, comic book versions of stuff. You know how Dallas is talking about, basically, demon energized Hulk who's fighting gods and stuff. They did that a lot with I know they did that a lot in Spawn, where, he's basically, once he's done taking out hell, he's going to the heavens. I love these grandiose kind of divine cosmic entity fights where they do this in the comics. They'll never have the balls to do that in MCU. There's no way. They'll just keep doing the same format that makes sense. Homecoming, where we got cool sneakers and Aunt May's looking hot. We're gonna go down those routes. We're never gonna see, like, for example, that the whole symbiote, like, multi-universe thing where there's that massive, like, super metal looking dude who's like the king of all symbiote with, like, the sword. I think his name is like Karn or something. I actually can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he's more of a recent villain who's just a top tier villain. He's like, basically, he's sitting in a chair. I'm a sucker for space chairs. I love space chairs. I love MODOK sitting in the chair.
Maestro.
Dr. Doom sitting in the chair. You got Galactus sitting in the chair. So I love it when a villain has a nice chair. When they get that lazy boy, that space lazy boy going, I love that stuff. So it's really nice to see that. I think Apocalypse even sat in a couple chairs in his day too. So I love to see that.
Well, look at Hulk, Maestro, the Hulk from 1,000 years in the future, whatever. He sits in a chair too, has like people chained up to his thing. Yeah,
I think we can all give some space chairs some appreciation. Some of the coolest villains, and I mean, obviously, this isn't the episode for it, but I mean, Doctor Doom is my favorite villain of all time. What they did with that character, and when we're talking about liberties in comics, Doctor Doom, especially when we're going Panther God, Doctor Doom, there's a lot of cool stuff they can do. But again, I just want to stress there is a difference between the comic books and the MCU. I feel like the MCU will never have the goal to, like, go through some of these crazily obscure and just power creep. So
well, you can't. There's no really way to do it justice. You know what I mean? Like, even like, I'm not talking about the Demon Hulk that literally, like you say, is fighting gods and entities and all these things. Like, there's no way to do that. Number one, and number two, like, even the second most powerful one in my opinion, which is World Breaker Hulk. He literally is so powerful. When he walks, he causes earthquakes on the earth. Like, how do you really? You know what I mean? Like, when you're that powerful that you can literally defeat Juggernaut, all the X-Men, and go toe to toe with Sentry, which is literally Marvel's Superman. Like, you know what I mean? You
Well,
can't.
why not split it out, kind of do a Dragon Ball Z thing where you have separate universes, Why not just have massive CGI fest where Hulk is just killing all the Avengers, things that happen in the comics. I think those would be actually really big in the cinematic universe.
I think it's a fun idea, but it's definitely risky because you have to approach these in such a precise way. If you mess that up, if you mess Spider-Man's up, there's no way to come back from that. So it's unfortunate, but again, I'm willing to bet every cent in my bank account that there's no way the MCU is ever going to take on an overtaking like
they've got their formula.
They got the
making
formula.
money,
They know it
so
works.
It's working. That's the thing. It was 4 billion off phase 1, 6 billion off phase 2, and I don't even know, probably 10 or 15 billion off phase 3. Like, you can't compete with these movies. There's no other. Disney's huge. Disney bought the rights to Marvel. Like, I mean, Marvel's killing it, and there's no, like, they already said with the snap that's going to be basically the X-Men. Like, the mutants are going to come into the series now. They've literally, in phase 4,
Really, I wasn't aware of that. The mutant
Yeah, the
X-Men are
mutants.
gonna come in
The thing
to.
about the X-Men is they've kind of been in licensing hell for the longest time because
Mhm.
Fox had it for a while, and then they started to do all these Marvel kind of wanted a piece of the X-Men back again. And it was just all broken up, and it was a nightmare and a mess of a
Well, that's
phenomenon.
actually because of the original comic book Crash. Marvel was kind of just
Mhm.
throwing their characters at any studio that would give them a paycheck. That's why we had that original 2003 Hulk, and then we had the
Absolutely.
Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, and it just created a really big issue for them with the licensing.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, hindsight's 2020. If they knew how big I mean, obviously, it was so difficult for them to get the rights to Spider-Man back. I mean, it was very,
Hmm.
he would have been in the fray right out of the gate if it wasn't so difficult to just get the licensing. But it's finally great to see that they are going to come back with the X-Men. I think that it's going to be massive shoes to fill. Whoever is going to be the next
Hmm.
Wolverine, I think that that's going to be quite the undertaking. It was pretty free with Spider-Man. Honestly, you had Garfield or Garfunkel or whatever the guy's name was who did the new ones. Toby Maguire, although I love Toby Maguire, it's not like he was the Heath Ledger of the Joker series. He felt more of a Jared Leto kind of Spider-Man. So
Yeah.
it's pretty
I would
easy.
not compare Tobey Maguire to
I
Jared
was
Leto.
No, I'm not either. I
It's
love
an
Tobey Maguire.
analogy.
But all I was saying was that Tom Holland kind of had that for free. He didn't have to work too hard, but I think he was a great casting choice as well. But all I'm saying is when it comes to the big boys, I'm talking the top dogs and muscly, burly out dogs like we have, Robert Downey Jr. And you have, Chris Hemsworth. It's going to be big shoes to fill for the next person as Wolverine. I'm excited for it. I'd love to see it because sometimes I'm blown away by who's able to kind of take up the mantle of some of these characters. And Huey has even admitted that he's done with it. He may come back for another one, but it might be one. I mean, he's
He's getting
basically,
too old, in my opinion.
Dude, he
yeah, he
look at how
is.
ripped he was though in the last one though, man. Even in like it's just he can still do it, man. I guess Logan was the last one and he wasn't looking very ripped in that one. So
Well, you got to remember too, is Logan was such a good way to end that arc. I feel
Hmm.
like Logan was like
Logan
probably
was an
one of my
incredible movie.
was
yeah, it
it's
was.
one of my favorite renditions of Wolverine. But like I say, I mean, I would love to see that. Okay, so again, I'm just gushing as far as if I had my choice of how to do it. We've seen a lot of the Weapon X stuff, and it's been touched on quite a bit. But I would love the next person to really do the whole Berserker headgear Wolverine and him in the forest, like with the wolves and stuff. I would have loved to see Weapon X Wolverine more fleshed out in that character. So I feel like whoever does the next Wolverine, I would just love to see more Weapon X.
Uh, oh, sorry.
I've always
Finish what you
loved
were saying. Yeah.
yeah, I've always just loved the idea of his healing factor being one of the only reasons he
Hmm.
could survive these experiments, and it's this incredibly strong metal that's within his skeleton. And my favorite thing about Wolverine, people can say what they want about Wolverine, but my favorite thing of all time about Wolverine is the fact that he always keeps trying to fuck with Magneto. I love it. He's basically like, I'll get Magneto. And then they're like, don't, Wolverine, you're made of metal. And then all of a sudden he goes and he's like, ow, my bones, every single time. So it's really nice to see that the next person who plays Wolverine, I really hope is able to kind of really want to take on Magneto over and over like that again. I really think that that's an important aspect of Wolverine, just fighting a guy who's literally your counter. But like I say, I think it's big shoes to fill, and I hope they fill them good.
Yeah, that's one aspect that I can really appreciate of Marvel's cinematic universe is just the fact that some of these movies they take liberties, like Logan, Deadpool, they're going more of a R-rated approach, where in contrast you have Marvel where there's no blood, the actual core cinematic universe movies where it's more PG friendly, there's no blood or gore, but then you have Logan where he's just getting ripped to shreds, and that scene where you have younger Logan come in, the clone or whatever. Just that scene is just so incredible. Just the fight scene between them two, and I really like this approach where the movies have more of a R-rated kind of gore-ridden, really dark, edgy kind of vibe to them. I really appreciate that, and Logan is definitely one of my favorite Marvel
Deadpool is the one
movies.
that pushed that forward. So
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm in the same camp as you. I hope they're able to take it in a more rated R side of it, because again, these Marvel movies you can take the kids to. I would love to see something that's more Watchmen-esque. I mean, I know people always give that movie such a hard time, but Watchmen is probably my favorite movie of all time as far as comic book movies. I know that's like a bit of a, probably a bit of a surprise to most, but I thought The Watchmen was such a great little kind of campy. You had The Weekend Watchmen, which really didn't do much to the actual graphic novels, and I know that they were a far cry from that. But to see that movie, the opening scene where the comedian's just getting lambasted in his apartment and thrown out the window, I love that. I also love just the idea of Dr. Manhattan. He's this god among men, and him, creating this structure on Mars. There's such great quotes in that movie as well. I personally love that movie. The one thing I will say about Watchmen, even though I know this has nothing to do with Marvel or Phase One or any of that, is the fact that Rorschach had this very Dark Knight Joker-esque kind of thing, where it's like a lot of weird, creepy individuals really gravitated towards that character and try to make him a hero. It's always unfortunate when Halloween gets ruined for the next 2 to 3 years, and I think that these edgelord characters, with switchblades and masks and painting their face always ruins it a little bit. There's always the edgelords that come out of the woodwork, but like I say, we can pull it back to obviously Phase One though.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just because you were talking about Rorschach, I'm going to bring up the Marvel equivalent to that Rorschach, which is the Punisher. The Punisher.
They're bringing him into the cinematic universe, aren't they?
Dude. Okay. So Carter, what's his name? Come on, you know his name. What's the Punisher's name? The guy who plays him.
Jon Bernthal.
Jon Bernthal. Okay, so he plays Punisher in Daredevil is when he was introduced.
That's Walking Dead Boy, isn't it? That's Walking Dead Boy?
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
it's Walking Dead Boy. So he did so good in the Daredevil season 2 that they gave him his own show. So he did season 1 and season 2 in the Punisher on Netflix. So now he did so well and it was received so well that they're going to be bringing him into the MCU, not necessarily as that Punisher, but definitely as the Punisher, which is really, obviously they can't have that Punisher because he's gunning people down in motels and he's probably killed like 500 people in the prison scene in Daredevil. He literally killed like 10 guys with like I don't even know what it was, like some kind of like shiv, like wooden shiv.
I think that he does a great job as Frank Castle, but the original Punisher movie, I mean, that's another sleeper movie. That's phenomenal.
You're such a hipster, hey.
I love that movie. I absolutely love that movie. I love Kevin Nash as the Russian. I love that I can't believe John Panette is the kind of chubby Asian comedian who is making the dinner and stuff. I think that movie's great. I think that Frank Castle you can't beat that Frank Castle. I love that one. I don't like this shaved head Punisher, this kind of bad boy look. I like the idea that the way that Frank Castle was portrayed in the first Punisher movie, I think is untouchable. That's my opinion. I think that there's no one who's going to do it better, even though I got to give props to the Walking Dead boy. I think he can really have some good chops with these movies. And obviously he's getting some traction with this character. So that's good to see. But again, I think that the theme of a lot of this is filling shoes. I think that it's really hard to fill those already filled shoes from the Frank Castle from the first Punisher movie. And you had John Travolta in that one too. So it's really hard to not just absolutely love that movie.
Okay, so here's the thing. So Phase 1 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like we said, consists of Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Captain America. So there's 6 of them, right? So and there's also 6 movies in that first phase. So there's also 6 movies in the second phase. Altogether in Phase 1, 2, and 3, there's 23 movies. And that includes Ant-Man and Wasp, Doctor Strange, all of them. So there's 23 movies. In Phase 4 alone, there's 30 movies and TV series for Phase 4.
And none of them look interesting to me at all, in my personal opinion.
I'm so excited, man. I'm so excited for
when I saw that screenshot where they put a post on Instagram of like all the different shows they were going to bring in Phase 4. Literally none of them really seemed to catch my interest, but
I think it's hero fatigue right now. And it's something that I think that a lot of people probably have it on the tip of their tongue, but no one's really talking about it. It's just the fact that, like, I mean, come on, I'm 29 years old. Like, I'm not that old, but it's like, I'm not a spring chicken anymore by any means. These movies have been in theaters ever since I was a small kid. I think a lot of people are kind of starting to get the hero fatigue. Especially after Endgame and Infinity War. I know for me, it's like, again, I love comic books. I love the MCU. I think these are phenomenal franchises, but around after Endgame and definitely after Infinity War, I was really kind of getting that hero fatigue, and it's very. I know if I'm getting hero fatigue, there's probably a lot of people that aren't so you know invested in these characters getting the fatigue as well. So I'm not even sure what the Phase Four lineups are looking like. Honestly, I know I've heard a couple whispers and murmurs throughout the crowd of what they could be doing. I heard that they're doing a Moon Knight movie, perhaps, which I think is going to be incredible. I love Moon Knight. And I mean, we've talked about this before, and this isn't Marvel, but I think that the new Robert Pattinson Batman is going to be great.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of ones that are coming down the pipe that are kind of just blowing and shattering through the glass of this hero fatigue that I have that I'm really excited for. But again, I haven't even really been able to look at the the Phase Four lineup. I mean, obviously, I know that this particular episode of the podcast is Phase One, and I think that we really touched on a lot of that. But it's also really fun to just talk about kind of what the upcoming stuff is too.
Yeah, there's a lot, the big plans. The thing is that really bugs me is both of you guys love Thor and you love Chris Hemsworth. So I can't believe you guys don't know about Thor: Love and Thunder that's coming out, where he finally passes on the mantle to Jane. And
Oh, that
basically
sounds awful. Even
Guardians
the
of the
title.
Guardians of the Galaxy is in it too, though. So I mean, I'm curious where it goes, because at the end of Endgame, you saw Thor hop on the ship with the Guardians, and like I think the chemistry that they had in the beginning of Infinity War was really, really good. So we'll see where it goes. Like I said, there's
For me, just in my opinion, I think Thor is kind of hit or miss. I think the first Thor movie was really good. They really kind of missed the ball on the second one, but then they brought it back with Ragnarok. So hopefully this next one won't be a miss. But I wasn't actually aware that they were making a new Thor movie, so that's kind of exciting. But hopefully they
Well,
don't
even
miss
just
like
that
in the
small
second one.
setup, even the title "Love and Thunder," like that's brutal. I think someone needs to definitely shake their head on that one. And also, passing the mantle of the God of Thunder makes no sense in my opinion. I know that there was definitely comics with this female Thor, so it's fine. I get it. They can go that route. But what we're all waiting for, I think we can all agree, all three of us in this one, and also everyone who's listening can also agree with this. We want Beta Ray Bill. We need Beta Ray Bill. He's really going to come back into the series and really revitalize Thor.
Who is
I think
Beta Ray Bill?
Beta Ray Bill is the only other person who lifted up his hammer and rocked his socks. He was the only other one who was worthy. In fact, he was so worthy, Odin decided to make him his own hammer called the Stormbreaker, and he ended up joining
can't be the
forces with Thor.
Stormbreaker. Can't
What?
be now.
Well, it
Can't.
can't, obviously, because
Yeah.
they did that in a very I thought it
Was
was
he
well
the
done.
weird looking character? Like he
Horseman.
Yeah,
wasn't a human.
the
He was a
yellow
horse
guy,
guy.
the guy with
Okay.
like with the
And you
weird
know what's
horse
great?
nose.
The fact that if you actually look very hard in Thor Ragnarok, that's the one at the tournament, I believe,
Hmm.
where they're fighting in the gladiator
His
tournament,
head
right?
was on the mountain.
His head was on
Yeah,
the stadium
as one of
as
the
one of the heads. That
champions.
Beta Ray Bill was on there, so they obviously know that he. I mean, technically, if you want to be super technical, I don't like to go down this route, but it's like he's clearly canon if his depiction is on the side of a building.
Hmm.
But it's going to be hard to introduce him now because, like Dallas said, they did really introduce the Stormbreaker out of the gate, which is the essentially the mirrored version of Mjolnir. But they did it in a really cool way. I like to see Peter Dinklage as a 7-foot giant. I love to see things like this, and him the way they crafted it in the heart of a dying star. I loved the creation of Stormbreaker. I just really wish that they would have gave Beta Ray Bill his his time in the sun, because I know that Dallas may think that I'm kind of being a little bit topical, or sorry, rather Carter thinks I'm being topical, but I know Dallas, the boy upstairs here, definitely knows that this is a character that I love, and I think that they really come on. We deserve a little bit of a taste, even if he gets to just body Thor a little bit in a tournament, or even Hulk, for example, if they do a Planet Hulk movie.
Dude, the Planet Hulk movie, that's the one thing. Like that's like obviously I knew about Beta Ray Bill way before the Hulk movie, but it was sweet in the Hulk movie seeing a powerful Asgardian, like literally other than Odin and Thor, like the number, he is the most powerful Asgardian, and getting to watch the Hulk just body him like easily was sweet. Like that just goes to a testament of how powerful Hulk is, and that's why I'm going to bring it all the way back to the Avengers, the first movie, where it literally was the first that time that I can remember ever on a culmination of 5 movies before it, all into one movie, not based around one specific character, but based around 6 individual characters. And it ended up being literally at that time, it was the number 2 grossing movie of all time, right behind, or no, number 3, right behind Avatar, Titanic, and then the first Avengers. So I just think that goes to show how those 5 individual movies, obviously 2 were Iron Man, but how 5 movies could go into one movie and literally break box office records. You know what I mean? It was a
Well,
smart
come
idea.
on. We have to remember the MCU, and we've talked about this before, are, gods of the movie setup. They were able to set up these movies so perfectly, and they had a goal in mind. I know that in the previous episode we touched on how the DC has just basically been dragging their feet when it comes to their setup of their movies and their execution. But one thing that I don't think anyone could really disagree with is the fact that MCU has been gorgeously articulating these setups, and it's so great to see. Avengers at the time was something that me and Dallas were really excited for. I know that Carter was a little bit younger, but I know that me and Dallas have been reading comics of the Avengers for years before that. We knew where it was all going eventually, and they were setting these movies up. But when we found out that the Avengers movie was going to the silver screen, we were really excited about it. And I think it was phenomenal. It was such an ambitious crossover at the time. It was so great to see all these epic, great characters portrayed on the silver screen and the theaters in the flesh. So you got to give your props up for Marvel and their setup. No one does it like them. The setup is just perfect. The writing is really good, and the CGI is pretty groundbreaking. I think that it all culminated into the first Avengers movie that we got in Phase 1, and that was, I think, the crowning achievement of Phase 1.
Well, that's the thing. The thing I liked about it is you only had really 4 characters that were actually like, oh man, people are gonna give me flack for this, but like 4 main characters in it, right? You know what I mean? You had obviously Mark Ruffalo, Hulk. You had
Black Widow.
Chris Evans. Oh, see, I wasn't even gonna say Black Widow. I was gonna say Chris Evans, Captain America, Robert
Hawkeye.
Downey. Okay, quit saying Hawkeye and Black Widow. I know there's 6 characters, right? But 2 of them didn't have their own movies, right? Black Widow was introduced in Iron Man 2, and Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye was introduced in the first Thor, right?
Aren't they both getting their own movies?
Really
Or
quickly, I think that this is something that I just want to touch on really quickly. I think it's incredible that we just talk about for a split second now the fact that the Black Widow movie that's coming out, I wasn't really that excited for it when I initially saw it, but the fact that they're doing Taskmaster, I was just like blown away. He's such an incredible villain. I just love the idea that he's this villain that has the ability to just like basically on the fly perfect someone's technique. So all of a sudden in the movie, he's using Black Panther claw techniques. He's using Black Widow's like agility and stuff. He's using Hawkeye arrow stuff. He's such a formidable foe, and I think that's such a creative superpower that he can just instantly be better at the stuff that you're at. I'm actually very excited for the Black Widow movie. I could take or leave Scarlett Johansson. I don't really care. If it was Chris Hemsworth in that cat suit, I could really deal. I could
Rar.
repeatedly. But the Taskmaster in those movies, I think, is what's going to be just a great character. I think that the design was a little bit of a miss for me. I just used to love the Taskmaster who had the actual skull for a face and would talk with that very Skeletor look. But they're making him very grounded, and he has like the very cool outfit and stuff. So, like I say, I just want to touch on that a little bit.
No, that's the thing. Honestly, it's nice to see because Natasha Romanoff's character was obviously killed off in Endgame, so it's nice to see that they're bringing her back, even if it's only for one more outing. The thing that I'm really concerned about with the whole MCU in general is because of the whole COVID thing and the movie theaters, and like I don't really know what's going to happen with the box office movies and stuff, because the Hollywood lost billions and billions of dollars with this whole COVID thing. So I'm really curious, if it's ever going to go back to normal. You know what I mean? If these MCU movies will still be king, or if maybe now it'll just be the all straight to direct
honestly,
TV.
I doubt it. They're kind of taking liberties and kind of doing more obscure characters. So I don't think Marvel will continue to be on this reign of terror and just dominate all the movies. I think it'll probably fall off with these new additions to the cinematic universe.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought so too, but I mean, even just on YouTube, the WandaVision stuff, like, and how many hits and how many views it has and stuff like that, considering it's a straight to direct show, like straight to Disney Plus. It just, I don't know. there's traction that could be made, but obviously, like I said, with the fact that there's literally more movies and TV shows in phase 4 than there was in phase 1, 2, and 3, I'm a little bit skeptical myself. But I know the big boys will do good, like the Doctor Strange Into the Madness, where they're
Hmm.
going into other
Yeah, I'm not
universes.
talking about the main kind of movies. I'm talking about
Mhm.
more so just the obscure kind of
But you got to remember that
films they're
something
doing.
something to really think about is the fact that COVID is a massive reason why people are even willing to watch WandaVision. They're locked in their home. They have nothing better to do than watch something that
Mhm.
has WandaVision on their television. If they could go outside and go for a bike ride or even go uptown, there's no way WandaVision would be on Disney Plus. So it just goes to show that they're really trapped within their own residence and they have no choice but to watch WandaVision. So things like that. I think that, like how Dallas said, the big boys are always going to be on the top block. But again, I think as we'll see in maybe roughly 10 years or so, depending on how how people and the box office are able to bounce back from, COVID-19, it'll be interesting to see. But I think for the most part, and I hate to admit it because these are series I love, I think people are really starting to get the superhero fatigue. And I think that as the years go by, more ambitious and very interesting movies that come out are going to be the ones that are able to top it. I think that if they're able to, do more obscure kind of creative stuff instead of rehashing, movies where we're essentially getting, from what I gather, this new Robert Pattinson Batman is going to give us somewhat of an origin story. I think people are getting sick of origin stories. I think people are that we know that we understand the origin stories of all these heroes. If you go to the theater, chances are you already know the origin for years and years and years. So, how we were talking about before, it would have been really nice to see a lot of these end game, like Batman being at his peak when he basically, has contingency plans for taking out the entire Justice League and stuff like that. I would love
Mhm.
to see a lot more Endgame. It's almost impossible at this point to see Endgame of stuff, especially with the MCU, because I feel like they've already taken it in a certain route where it's very hard to go up from there, just because they've introduced characters like Ultron and characters like Thanos. But like I say, they got the X-Men back. It'll be nice to see how they do that. But I think for the most part, um, you know, it's gonna be hard for them to keep this momentum and this crushing drive that they've had for years and years at the top. I really think that the whole COVID and Hollywood kind of getting
Yeah.
the short end of the stick has really been a nail in the coffin for their momentum and their progressive traction that they've been getting. Give it roughly 10 years, because they're already starting to do more kind of ambiguous, more risky stuff. Like the new Joker movie was really risky. So I think that it's going to take probably one or two more absolute flops and people are just not going to care about superhero movies anymore. That's my opinion. I think in 10 years, unless they're really able to kick it into overdrive and really impress us, I think that the superhero fad is going to be over.
We'll find out in the phase 4. That's literally what's gonna happen. Like with between 30 movies and 30, TV shows, like we'll
It's the
find out
make
if
or
there's
break.
yeah, we'll find
Mhm.
out if the traction's still gonna be there after. Like they still have tons of places to go. Like I said, they can have Apocalypse back now. They could bring back a really thug life, a Magneto. They got the rights to Fantastic Four, so they could have Doom. You know what I mean? They could
Oh,
have
I'm loving all of this
Kang,
actually.
Kang the Conqueror. They could bring back Galactus in an actual proper form instead of the stupid Rise of the Silver Surfer like Fox did. You know what I mean? There's a lot of
Ooh,
places
even
they could
Silver
go.
Surfer, if they did a
Oh,
stand
I forgot
Silver
about that.
Surfer, that
Yeah.
would just, oh, that would be incredible. And
Yeah.
let's not forget, if they get a little bit ambitious, they can do Spider's Man. I would love to see a rendition of that in theaters. It would be really great to see this hive mind Peter Parker that's his body is comprised of hundreds of thousands of spiders really on the silver screen would be great.
So anyways, guys, we're gonna wrap this up because we're at over our hour mark here. We appreciate all the support we've been getting from everything we've done. Just the thing is, just to remember, we're gonna be talking about tons of different stuff over the next few months, and it's gonna be video games, movies. Obviously, with the whole COVID thing, like the movie scene has slowed down a lot, so there's gonna be less to talk about there. But we just really, really do appreciate you guys leaving comments, likes, subscribing, all that fun stuff, guys. Let us know, send us messages like what you guys would like us to talk about next, because we're down to hear whatever you guys want us to do. We're literally doing this for you guys and because we love to talk, we love to hang out, and this is just a way three brothers can just bro out. So anyways, guys, you guys all have a wonderful day, and this is from Dallas, Cat and Carter. Peace.